Welcome to Horrid and Vicious, a true crime podcast. I'm Coda.
And I'm Candy.
And this is episode 5, The Brutal Murder of Sherri Rasmussen.
All right, so I don't really have like a whole lot of trigger warnings or anything. I mean, obviously there's a brutal murder, but it's not like one with assault, like sexual assault and stuff. I would say maybe there's like some stalking and stuff like that involved.
That is actually a good trigger warning.
Yeah.
I feel like I probably should have included that with Selena.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's
didn't
a trigger
even
warning
think about it until right now. I didn't get my trigger warnings ready today.
That's okay. Not like to go off on a tangent already, but that is a really good trigger warning. That's one that I feel like people don't think of a lot, but that is a really traumatic thing.
Yeah,
so
and like if somebody's been through it, like I feel like they probably wouldn't want to necessarily hear about it.
Right. No, fully.
So I guess, yeah, trigger warning, stalking, murder, obviously. Burglary, but not burglary. I don't know how else to say that.
Like a staged burglary?
Almost. Like they kind of tried to make it look like one, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But just in case, hearing about burglary is a trigger, I don't want to laugh because it genuinely could be, but it sounds silly to say it that way. Anyway, so to start off, Sherri was born on February 7th in 1957 in Walla Walla, Washington. It's really fun to say.
That sounds like it's really fun to say.
Yeah, Walla Walla, Washington.
Walla Walla, Washington.
I did hear one person say actually in another like podcast that I listened to about it, they said she was born in Arizona, but I saw several articles that said Washington. I didn't see any articles that said she was born in Arizona, although I did see one that said she might have grown up in Arizona, but multiple said she was born there. So that's what I'm going with, is that she was born in Washington, potentially raised in Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say that.
Yeah, and then she had, obviously, her parents. She had her father, Nels, and her mother, Loretta, and she had an older sister named Connie.
I love the name Loretta. I don't know what it is about it. I just really like that name. I think it's a beautiful name.
One of my best friends when I was in, like, elementary school, her mom's name was, I think it was Loretta. It might have just been Lori, but I think it was Loretta.
Loretta is just so pretty to me. I don't know.
I like L names.
Yeah, L names are really nice.
Yeah, my go-to was always, I was planning, like, Leandra, because I thought that was pretty.
That's pretty.
That's not my plan anymore. Anyway, so, it's Ophelia now. But
I
anyway,
love that, actually.
So, growing up, Sherri was already, like, super smart, just, like, as a kid, and she always showed promise, and she was actually able to skip 2 grades, which led to her starting college when she was just 16. And then,
honestly, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's
so impressive.
She's super smart. And then, like, also to be doing so well as, like, a woman in the 80s, like, and I mean, I feel like that was kind of a really progressive time too for that. Like, that was when it was becoming more of a thing. Mm-hmm. And, like, looking at pictures of her, like, my mom was around her age, sort of thing. Like, I think my mom's a little younger than Sherri was, but just kind of she gave off that same kind of vibe of, like, independent kind of woman, That time period was
love it.
A time when it was kind of becoming a little more normalized. And it was pretty cool.
And we love that. We love that.
And she was one of them who was, bringing that forward and doing what she could there.
And it's just so impressive. Like, I'm the type of person that's like, a D is passing,
Me.
Like, so to hear that somebody against, like, odds stacked against them was able to do something like start college at 16, that's so amazing to me.
Mm-hmm. Her father was a dentist, and he encouraged her to become a doctor, which would have been super, super progressive for that.
That's super cool.
But
that's so
she
cool.
didn't really want to be a doctor. She wanted to, like, the money aspect is great, of course, and she wanted to help people. But as she was going through her schooling, she figured out what she wanted from life, and she wanted to have more time. She didn't want to be on call 24/7 like a doctor would be. So
Yeah,
she
no, that's
chose something
understandable.
else in the medical field. She wanted to be able to be a wife and a mother while also having an incredible career. So she went for
Mm,
nursing instead of being a doctor.
love that.
And she wanted to be like the best of the best and like revolutionize the nursing field and to help make the world better through it.
And I love
And
that.
then,
Because,
yeah,
like,
she moved really fast with all of this too. Because I mean, like I said, she started going to school or going to college at 16.
that's still, like, really hard for me to
So
wrap my head around.
crazy.
That's so impressive. That's so impressive.
hmm Well, and when she was 27 years old in 1984, she was the director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center in
I
California.
love that.
So at like that's really young to be a director of something
It
at a
is.
medical center.
It is, but that's awesome.
I mean, a lot of people would just be getting out of medical school at that time, and she was
Right.
already ahead enough to be like a director of nursing. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
So she was living in California, and while she was living there and working at the Glendale Adventist Medical Center, she met a recent UCLA graduate named John Rutten, and they both just very quickly fell in love. They clicked immediately. And
Cute.
Sherri's parents were kind of wary of John because they just didn't think he was good enough for their daughter because, I mean, they weren't wrong about, like, who she was. She's amazing, sort of thing. Incredibly smart, incredibly talented. But they didn't think he was good enough for her.
I
sort
mean,
of thing.
fair.
Not to say that he wasn't, like, a good guy or anything, but she was very high up on a pedestal for good reason because she was so smart. But they also saw how much that she adored him and how happy he made her, so they supported them nonetheless.
Real. Love that.
Yeah. And then in November of 1985, the pair got married, and they were living together in the Van Nuys neighborhood of Los Angeles, California.
I think something's clicking in my brain, so I do think that
What's
I've heard
clicking
this
in your
case.
brain?
Just
Oh
a few
no.
things. I think, but I wanna know if I'm right. So,
I think you are, which kind of sucks because I kind of built this whole thing to do a plot twist, but whatever. They were still newlyweds, getting used to married life together when the worst would occur. On Monday, February 24th, 1986, the day started off a little bit differently than normal. Sherri had a class that she was supposed to supervise for some of her nursing charges, but she just was not feeling up to it. Normally, she was not the type who would, like, call out without good reason, and she would have just, like, powered through not wanting to. But
right.
she really did not want to go. So she decided to kind of stay home that day. Usually she left for work before John did, but she was still in bed when he left, and she was still kind of contemplating whether she was going to go or not when he left for the day. And while he was at work, he called home to check in on her, but he didn't get an answer, so he thought maybe she decided to head in after all. So he decided to try to call her at work. But he couldn't really reach her there either. Her secretary, though, did say that it was not abnormal for her to not stop by the office on mornings when she had classes. So they didn't really think much of it because if she had a class in the morning, she normally would just go straight to it.
Right.
So it wasn't weird that her secretary hadn't seen her yet.
Right.
He did try the house phone again a few times, but to no avail. And he was getting pretty worried throughout the day, but he didn't really know how serious it was. So he kind of pushed it to the side and continued his day until he got home that evening. And he found it very strange when he got home and the garage door was left open and Sherri's car was gone. And there was a little bit of glass on the floor. But she had previously, like, messed up something on her car. So he thought, oh, she, like, broke the glass. What did she do now? Sort of thing.
Right.
He's just like, oh, my clumsy wife. Love her, sort of thing. But then he went inside.
Oh.
And it was worse than he could have imagined. Sherri was on the living room floor, beaten and bloody with 3 gunshot wounds to her chest.
Oh,
And he
man.
immediately called the police, but she was already gone before he got there.
That's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
That's so sad.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, even if he had gotten there sooner, one of the things I read did say that the first gunshot, like the way that it hit, like she would have been dead within a few minutes anyway. So him not getting there sooner wouldn't have really changed anything.
That's still
but it
so
is sad.
terrible. Like, especially because, like, he tried to reach out to her several times, so you know he was at work worried about her already.
Well, because
she
it
didn't
wasn't
feel
normal
good.
for her to not go in.
Right.
So he was kind of like, oh, I'll just check in on her. And then she didn't answer, so he was like, ooh, maybe I should try again, sort of thing. So he tried a couple times, but then he was like, I mean, this is the 80s. They don't have cell phones, so not hearing from somebody isn't always the end of the world.
Right.
When things are like that.
That's true.
So the police came, they examined her and the home further. There was a broken vase on the floor. There was a VCR and a CD player stacked by the stairs with some blood smeared on the top of them. And when they got upstairs, they found that their balcony's sliding glass door, one of them was shattered on one side. So they think the fighting started there, and that's also where the glass came from, that it was shattered outwards, like towards outside. So that's why there was glass near the garage.
Okay.
I don't know the exact setup of the house, but I'm imagining it must have been above the garage where the bedroom was, I guess.
Yeah, that's the
Just
only
in
thing
my
that
head.
makes sense to me, because I'm like, how does glass get from the bedroom down to the garage?
Yeah, I was trying to think of other ways too before. I was like, maybe the bedroom's just right above it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that would make sense.
Yeah, so then they kind of believed the fighting had started like around there, or maybe it was that she had come downstairs when something was happening downstairs. They don't know exactly, but door was shattered, the glass was near the garage, there's all kinds of things. Downstairs where the vase was shattered, they believed that the vase was like smashed over Sherri's head.
Oh.
And when they examined her body, they found significant damage to her right eye. That's where they believed that she was hit on the top of the head with that vase. And they found a bite mark on her forearm. And tons of evidence was collected, including a swab of the bite mark for DNA. They were able to recover 2 .38 caliber bullets from her body. And things were cataloged and stored, but this was the 80s, so DNA testing wasn't really advanced yet.
Right.
And then, as far as the car, Sherri's car being missing, they found her BMW about a week after her death, but they didn't really find any evidence in it that I could find in any articles. And there had been a couple burglaries in the area, so the police kind of settled on this idea that the murder had been committed by 2 men who were doing those burglaries. And they said that Sherri's case was kind of just a wrong time and place, and that the burglars just probably didn't expect her to be home because she normally wouldn't have been, and that the attack was like an impulsive thing where she walked downstairs and caught them and all this stuff.
Biting somebody is not an impulsive thing.
I
mean,
know.
But that's like, no, like, you know this person. And you're
some
being
of the
disrespectful.
things is that they think that happened like during fighting because she was like fighting back. But they also thought that the fight went on for like an hour and a half, which you're telling me this girl was fighting with 2 men for an hour and a half, which is how her dad reacted.
Right. I
He
mean,
was not,
honestly.
yeah, he was not confident about the way they were treating his daughter's murder.
Not just 2 men, 2 armed men. Mm-hmm. Like, with guns. An hour and a half.
He also had a little bit more of a, what's the word? He had more insight that he did tell police, but it wasn't really followed up on. He told the investigators about a woman who had been harassing Sherri because she had been confiding in him for months at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't remember the name of the person that Sherri said was harassing her, but he gave the details that he did remember. Mm-hmm. And he knew that the woman was one of John's exes.
Yep.
And that Sherri had been confiding in him for weeks about this woman. She'd shown up at their home and at her workplace previously. She'd shown up to see John once at their house asking for him to wax her water skis. And Sherri was like, please don't do that. That's weird. But he did anyway because he was like, she's just an old friend. And then she showed up at Sherri's work and she was like, if I can't have John, no one can.
Okay.
She didn't do anything then, but she did say that to her at
that,
work.
yeah, that is that's suspicious to say the
Yeah.
least.
And prior to their wedding in November, she had written a letter to John's mother the
Oh,
August before the wedding saying, I'm truly in love with John, and the past year has really torn me up. And she said, I wish it didn't end the way it did, and I don't think I'll ever understand his decision.
okay, but
So they
girl, it's
have
his
that in
decision.
writing.
Like, girl, it's his decision. Move on with your life.
Well, and Sherri said to her dad that a couple times she had seen someone who was dressed as a man, but that she believed was a woman, following her around. And she didn't confirm if that was the same person, but she was like, I think there's like somebody dressed as a guy, but that is definitely a girl following me right now.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
great.
and John loved his wife, so he did like console her somewhat, but he didn't take the ex-girlfriend thing super seriously because he barely even considered the woman to be an ex-girlfriend. It was more
Right.
of like a fling or a friend with benefits.
And
But he
I
did
feel
give
like
police her name, which is Stephanie Lazarus.
I feel like a lot of men do that thing where they're like, "Oh, she's just an ex. She was barely even an ex," because I think women tend to be more emotionally invested in relationships sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes men are just kind of like,
I got a little bit of a spoiler alert. She definitely didn't see it as just a fling or whatever at the time, but later on, she does try to say that that's all it was too.
I think I know who this lady
For a
is. I think
reason.
I know who this woman is, and I already know that I don't like her. I
Well,
mean, I don't like
like
any
I
of these
said,
people, but like, of course,
yeah,
like,
like I said, her name is Stephanie Lazarus, and obviously, like between all of this going on, at some point, her dad does figure out that that's like her name, sort of thing, and he was hounding the department, and he was like desperate for them to take action.
as any
But the
good
case
parent
was,
would be.
yeah, the case was considered cold because they didn't have any actual suspects.
You
Is what
literally
they were
have
kind of saying.
there's a literal suspect that has been
Yeah, but
named by
they
both of the people surviving
well,
this person.
here's the thing: is John didn't think that she was a suspect. He gave the name because he was asked, sort of thing.
Oh,
But
okay, I
he
see.
didn't think that she was a suspect. He was like, I don't know, I don't think she would do that.
But if he knows there's beef, there's always a possibility.
He didn't think it was beef.
Oh yeah, I
he,
guess it's true.
he
Like
it
he's like,
was very
I don't have
casual to
any
him.
beef. I don't
I
have
think
any
he
beef.
truly.
My wife
Here's the
doesn't
thing: is
like her.
he truly believed that it was like not that bad. Like I don't think he was just playing it off as not that bad. I think in his head he didn't think it was that bad.
Which is like fair.
Yeah, I wish he had listened a little more to Sherri, but at the
I
same time, I
agree.
don't think that would have necessarily prevented what happened. Because
No, not necessarily.
yeah, I don't know, weird.
But
But
I think it's normal to expect people to take their partner's concerns seriously, even if they seem a little ridiculous,
that's what I'm saying.
because it may seem
The glance I
ridiculous
would-
to you. Well, I can't glance at Kyle because
I
Kyle's
glanced
not home.
over.
But but generally, like, even if it doesn't seem like it's such a big deal at the time, maybe it was at one point, maybe it is to them, maybe it could be at some other point. I just think if your partner is concerned about something and they're bringing it to you, they trust you enough, which they should trust you enough to bring something like that that may cause confrontation, and they're willing to talk about it with you, take it seriously.
Yeah,
If your partner brings you a comment, question, or concern, take it seriously.
slay, so true.
I know.
But like I said, they just considered the case cold because they were like, we're looking for these two guys. We don't know where they are.
We can't consider
Sort of thing.
anybody else but these two guys.
Yeah.
Who we don't
So-
know. Who we don't know.
When the DNA testing started advancing over the years, her father begged them to test the blood, hair, and saliva samples that they had from the crime scene.
As they
But-
should.
He was denied because the department didn't have enough money and the testing cost a lot of money. So they basically were just like, it costs too much to run them. We can't afford to. But he also offered to pay for it. and they said they need a suspect to compare it to. They can't do it without a suspect because you have to compare the DNA. And he was like, I do have a suspect. But that was completely disregarded.
And now
they were set on this. They were like, it's these two guys, and they were trying to rob Sherri and John's house.
I'm mad about this. No,
yeah,
the police
they didn't
work.
have any evidence to prove that those two men were ever there. And actually, thanks to them not taking action when he asked them to, soon they wouldn't have almost any evidence at all. Because after he was requesting them to check the DNA samples, mind you, this is like 7 years later, he's like, hey, we have this new stuff, this new testing, can you do it? He asks that. Not long after, all of the samples of forensic evidence get checked out by a detective named Phil Morit, and they're never seen again. And
shitty.
The thing is that it's pretty normal for detectives to check out samples from a couple cases, so he might have taken things from a couple cases, and it was normal sort of thing for them to like grab those samples and take them to the lab. But
why do I hear a no in your tone?
In a later interview, Phil said he didn't remember ever checking out those samples.
Oh.
So there's some confusion there, and no one knows where they are now. But there is one piece of evidence that wasn't correctly, like, logged into the file. It was mentioned in, like, what's the word? Like, their original thing about, the crime scene.
Like the notes, the case notes?
Yeah, but it didn't get added to the file when it got brought back. So left in the back of a freezer the whole time was the swap of the bite mark. And Phil didn't get that. So in 2005, they've been reopening and closing this, like not closing, but reopening the case and then kind of leaving it again and saying, nope, it's still cold. Right. And in 2005, they reopen it and they're like, hey, we found this sample in the back of the freezer. Let's try something with it. We don't have a suspect to try it against, but let's do some testing. And they're like, okay, this sample comes from a woman. So it wasn't a man that bit her. So that kind of destroys the two men robbery theory.
Take that, but you lazy detectives from before.
Here's the thing is those people, they looked through the paperwork and there was no mention of a woman in the paperwork. So they didn't know who to compare it to.
I think I know.
Kind of just sits there cold again.
I think
Sherri's
I have an idea.
case was a cold case for over 20 years after her death. And it was occasionally looked at, but never solved until 2009. And a new team reopened the case, and they were digging extensively through the limited evidence that they had. And finally, they were able to look a little deeper and find some paperwork that was kind of hidden that had mentions of Stephanie Lazarus, though most of the mentions of her had been removed. And
gee, I wonder why.
They found a report from the original detective on the case stating John Rutten called, verified Stephanie Lazarus, P.O., was former girlfriend. So it all started to click together when they were like, what does P.O. stand for? Maybe police officer. And they searched for Stephanie in their system, and they found that she was now a highly respected detective, dedicated to solving art thefts. And she was considered to be an all-around great person in their community for her accomplishments.
Why do I hear a but? Why do I hear a but?
I'm not going to dignify her by naming any of her accomplishments,
no,
okay?
Please don't. But I hear a but in this sentence. Like,
I didn't mention it earlier, but Sherri's father, when he was describing what he knew, but he didn't know the name of the woman that was harassing his daughter, he described her, he said, it's the lady cop.
The lady cop.
So the original detectives knew who they were supposed to be looking at the whole time, and they dismissed it.
This case makes me so mad, because you remember when we were talking about the first episode, how the police were like on it?
Mm-hmm. This is the opposite of
Bro literally named his son, literally the opposite, 20 years? Over 20 years. And
for
they had
somebody who was a suspect
name
from the start.
From the very beginning. And they just were like, meh, meh,
Well, and there's a
two
reason
men.
for that.
No. I mean, yeah,
And that
but
it's
no.
because they, like you can tell from the fact that somebody checked out that stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They were involved, you know? And it was the 80s, and they didn't want to make the whole department look bad by having it be found out that one of them had done this.
So they're gonna wait 20 years and look even worse.
Yeah, stupid. But I think
Like, okay.
I didn't look into who these new detectives were actually, but I watched this whole interrogation video of her.
Oh my god, I have
And
seen that
I
interrogation
think
video.
I think that the new cops were like young,
Yeah.
because the way they talk was a lot younger.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of funny. I didn't see them in the video, but I think they're young from their voices. But anyway, these new guys, they start looking into ways to connect Stephanie to the case, because they can't just go off woman's name.
Right.
So on the day of the murder, they saw that she had the day off work.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're like, what about the murder weapon? Well, they know that she wouldn't have used her like on-duty weapon, because then it would be known if she fired those rounds, sort of thing. But most police officers do have an off-duty weapon as well. And she did as well. She had a .38 caliber gun. And a few weeks after Sherri's death, she had reported that gun as stolen. But she reported it to a different department than her own. Because,
Weird.
you know, she didn't want them to have it in their files that she had reported the gun missing there.
Gee, I wonder why.
But without the actual gun, they couldn't prove it was the same one. So, you know, there's reasonable doubt there still. What they really needed was her DNA. So they needed to confirm that the DNA was a match, and without that, they could pretty much lose their whole case. So they followed her around, just, you know, like investigating from afar for the right opportunity. And it finally came when she went to Costco. She's having a drink in one of those like cups with a lid and a straw, and she finishes it and she tosses it in the trash. And they take her saliva from the straw.
That is so smart. But also,
This is like a movie.
yeah, it literally is like a movie. But also, wouldn't the trash like contaminate the DNA? Or no?
I don't know exactly how
DNA
they did
work?
it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here's
how
the
DNA
thing:
works.
is that it might be because it wasn't fully like in it. Because I mean, you know how those like straws stick out and stuff. They might have had a way to like. It might have been okay because it wasn't fully in it. And then they also just needed to connect her for now. They can always get another sample later. I think the concern here is, hey, stuff has gone missing before, so we need to have some evidence before we confront her.
Yeah, which is really smart because now that they have this, I'm sure that they can have grounds to like have a warrant to.
And
like,
at the very least, if the DNA is contaminated, it's not going to make it match because it's contaminated.
Right. True.
Right. And the sample matched. So.
Well, I'm not trying to dispute that she did it. Like, it's. I know she did. But.
Yeah, she did.
I just wonder how DNA works.
Yeah. I love that it works, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so good.
Because, I mean, I don't know if they could have. Even though, like, they might have known, like, been able to figure out that she was the one who did it, they might not have been able to prove it and get her in jail without that.
Exactly. Well, I think that some of this circumstantial evidence, like her literally stalking Sherri.
Yeah, but that wasn't something, I don't think it had been brought to the police. So they can't technically say that that really happened. It's just like, oh, her dad said this girl did this before.
Yeah, I mean, true.
You know?
But I mean, to be fair, that's
you have
kind
to
of
have
how
some amount of proof.
But that is sort of how they used to do it before you could get DNA and things
yeah,
like
but
that.
she was
Which
a
is
cop,
why
so they weren't going to do that.
True, but I'm talking about like way, way back. But that's also why murders did not get solved. As quickly or as concretely as they should have been, and they should always be.
Yeah, facts. But they waited until they had that confirmed before they questioned her. And she was around 50 at the time that this was finally happening. Just for the record, she was like 26 when she did it.
Yeah,
so that's a long time.
Yeah.
And I do want to play a clip from the interrogation just to kind of show her behavior for you.
I'm pretty sure I've seen her interrogation, and her behavior is really funny because it's so obvious that she's lying.
It is so
It's
obvious.
so
Oh my
fucking
God.
obvious. And I just love that they're like grilling her.
Well, it's so funny because she like immediately like corrected them. They're like, "Do you know John Rutten?" And she's like, "John Rutten? You mean John Rutten? Yeah, I know a John Rutten."
Really?
Like she
Okay.
immediately corrects them because, well, his name is spelled like you would think it would be pronounced Rutten
Right.
because it's Ruetten. So I get why they thought it was that. And this is also 20 years later.
But being that you were kind of used to see John, was it everything okay between you guys? I mean, there was never anything uncomfortable or anything between you and her?
I don't know. I mean, it's been so many years. I mean, uncomfortable. I mean, I can't even remember if we had a conversation. I mean, we may have. I may have seen her at his geez, how many years ago is that? I don't even know what year she, got killed.
Where was his apartment?
On Roscoe.
Okay.
Yeah, Roscoe and east or west of DeSoto. Either east or west of DeSoto.
Do you know where he moved after? Did he move after he got married, or do you know, or?
I'm sure he did.
Did you know where he was living, or?
Somewhere in the valley.
Did you ever visit him and his wife?
No.
No, never
No.
went out to, get together, dinners, anything of that nature?
No. Like I said, his sister used to come over. His sister had come to my place. I knew his brother because his brother played basketball at Northridge. In fact, I was just coming across some pictures that I had just scanned from. I take a lot of photos, like 10,000, and I just did a service where I scanned everything. And I'd seen some pictures of his brother playing basketball.
Well, you just put them all on your computer so you could have them accessible and do things with them?
Well, my partner is a big photo thing, and he had a deal to scan. So I spent a ton of time just scanning photos. I mean, I paid a company to do it. So I've got photos of, his brother, his sister, of
10,000 pictures?
Oh, yeah.
How long did that take them?
Months.
Okay, so kind of just what I want to highlight here is the way that she kind of has such a clear memory of like every other part of John's life. Like they ask for his address and she was so quick to say where he lived, the street names where he lived. I don't remember the street names where any of my friends live. Like,
Same.
Except for the person that I'm closest with right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
same.
Yeah, she remembered every other part of his life super clearly. She remembers where his brother went and played basketball. She remembers his exact address. Like, the only time that she doesn't seem to remember things clearly about him is when it's relating to Sherri.
How
So
convenient.
She remembers like the exact locations of all these things. She remembers all this stuff about his family. Doesn't recall when he got married or what year that his wife even died. You remember when somebody dies.
Yes, and also can I just point out the fact that she's like the year that she got killed. Like she's blaming Sherri for being killed. Like, girl.
Just the way that and she stutters whenever it's something about Sherri. And then she keeps kind of going off, like, as soon as she gets onto another subject, like the photo thing, she talks about, like, how she got all these photos. She kind of goes on to that tangent and kind of tries to draw the attention over there.
Yep. I noticed that.
Yeah, I only played, like, a very small part of it, but she kind of changes the subject to different things
Every
relating
time
to her
Sherri is
life.
brought up. Every single time Sherri's brought up.
Yeah, so if it's John, she'll, like, try to answer the questions. But if it's, like, something that could be related to Sherri, she's like, I don't know. It was 1,000,000 years ago. She says 1,000,000 years ago to every single question about Sherri. She's like, I
know. It's
why
literally...
are you telling me about? She literally said, why are you asking me all these things about a guy I dated 1,000,000 years ago, 20 years ago, 20, not 1,000,000. which, yeah, 20 is a long time. And I don't remember, like, stuff from 20 years ago, but also 20 years ago,
we were
3.
babies. Yeah, we were literally children, so we're not going to remember. She was in her 20s and her 30s. Like, you remember that. You remember that time in your life.
I mean, the stuff that was going on in her life, she definitely remembers. And, like, the way that she remembers these other things so clearly, it just doesn't add up at all.
Yeah. It's like, oh, how convenient that you remember literally every single detail about John and all of the fucking
and then
pictures
she keeps kind of going back and saying, like, oh, well, I don't want to say I didn't meet her because, like, maybe I did meet her, sort of thing. So it's all, like, uncertainties when she's talking about Sherri. Other stuff, she's like, well, yeah, I knew this guy. Oh, I knew this girl, sort of thing.
But
then when it comes to Sherri, she's like, well, I might have met her. I don't want to say I didn't because I don't know, but you know, this situation doesn't sound familiar. That's her other thing. She says things don't sound familiar.
Yeah, and another thing is when she said, well, I might have met her in John's apart, she cuts herself off. She cuts herself off because she's like, well, I might have met her once in John's apart, and then she realizes, oh, that could be like a Freudian slip, kind of, like where you're saying something about a detail of the case that could incriminate you, and you're just...
Well, and at one point she brings up, like, they're like, oh, wait, like, are you still in contact with John? At the very beginning of the thing, they're like, are you in contact with John? She's like, oh, like, not really anymore, but she originally was like, oh, yeah, we're good friends. And then it's like, well, did you have any further relationship? And she's like, I mean, I guess we dated, sort of thing. I don't know. It wasn't, like, super serious. When she, like, sent a letter to his mom saying I'm in love with him after he had been with his girlfriend at the time for a year and was getting married to her.
Yeah, she...
So it was just... And then, like, she brought up... She was like, well, I think maybe around, like... I think she said around, like, 1989, I think... We went to Hawaii. I went to Hawaii with my friend who... I mean, he's actually dying right now. And she's like, they're like,
what a weirdo.
I'm your dying friend. But she kept bringing up this friend. She kept going on about going to Hawaii, and she met John there, but she was there with her friend Greg, and Greg's currently dying of something with his stomach, I think she said. But she started talking about how her friend Greg is dying, as if that had anything to do with this. Literally. But she did after Sherri died actually cross paths again with John, who, again, did not believe that she had anything to do with the murder and actually did have sex with her again at that time, which I mean, I can't imagine how completely disgusting he feels now.
Oh,
I mean, already probably felt disgusting. No, here's the thing.
I don't hope he does.
He's not a bad guy from what I can tell. He did truly love his wife.
No, he's not a bad guy.
But he wasn't doing things properly, and also, like,
he wasn't in the right frame of mind
stuff
either.
Well, and I mean, before him and Sherri got married, he did have sex with Stephanie one more time, and he said it was to, like, give her closure, which that's not how that works. You don't give somebody closure by having sex with them.
No, you do not.
But that's what he said in his head. But he did tell Sherri, and he was like, I want to tell you about this. So again, I don't think he should have done it, but I do believe that he truly loved her.
Yeah.
You know, he truly loved his wife, sort of thing.
He definitely did. I mean, he called how many times to check up on her because he knew that she didn't feel good and she wasn't at work, which she always was. So he definitely understood and loved her.
Yeah. But, like I said, he did have, you know, like, not a big relationship again with her or anything, but they had sex again a couple years later when they met up again. But he actually moved out of LA for a while because he was just, like, really grieving, and he didn't want to live there anymore afterward.
That's understandable. Mm-hmm. That's really completely understandable. Mm-hmm.
But kind of back to this interrogation here, one of the things she also is saying a lot during it, which I didn't really include, but she keeps just saying, well, what's this about? Mm-hmm. And you can tell by the way she's saying it that she knows exactly what it's about.
She literally sounds like You know when
because
kids lie about
I think
stuff?
she just
Kids lie
I
about
think she
stuff?
just wasn't expecting 24 or whatever years later to have to be making up an excuse. She probably had like some story planned when it first happened, right, in case she needed to. And at this point she's like, oh, it's been 20 years, everything's fine, we got rid of all the evidence, I'm free, sort of thing. So she wasn't expecting to have to tell a story at all at any point, so she just keeps stuttering. She's like not prepared for it.
Yeah, they caught her completely off guard with that. And honestly, I have so much respect for the detectives to be able to do that. The amount of work that it took, props, honestly, props,
Yeah.
big props.
Well, and they were very like casual with her. At the end, she's finally kind of like, do I need to be getting a lawyer above like all this stuff?
You've
And they're
already
like, well,
said too much.
Hold on. Here's the thing: is they were like, you're here of your own free will. You can leave if you want. Like, if you're uncomfortable, you're welcome to walk out the door.
Yeah, because they didn't Mirandize
she was
her.
kind of like, she said, well, you are kind of making me uncomfortable now, sort of thing. And it was like, because you finally, after talking for an hour, are like, maybe I'm saying things that are going to get me in trouble, which as a police officer, she should have known already.
No, because there's another, a similar, it's
And
not
she
about a
did
murder.
know. They were talking to her. They were like, I mean, you know how this works. And she was like, yeah. And then she was kind of like, do I need like all this stuff? And then they were like, well, here's the thing. Like, for one, you can walk out whenever you want. The other thing they said to her, why did it just leave my brain entirely? I had words in my head and they're gone. Oh my God. I can't remember what I was about to say. It just left entirely.
Oh, no.
It was like an exact quote from the interrogation. And I didn't write it down, but it's in my head somewhere.
I believe
Aw,
it.
man. Yeah, I don't know what just happened to me. You tell your part.
Okay, so, I don't know if you've seen the interrogation of that one guy cop who was talking to minors on Snapchat. But,
Ew.
yeah, well, a detective, I don't remember if it was a private investigator or a detective or somebody. No, they got an anonymous tip. His station got an anonymous tip about it, and they investigated it, and he was there on his own free will, and he literally, like, answered all of their questions, and then was like, do I need to get a lawyer? And whoever was interviewing him was like, no, you're here on your own free will. And it's funny because, like, you would think that a police officer of all people would know, like...
Yeah, like, you can leave unless you're being detained, and then if you're being detained, you don't have to say anything.
Exactly.
And you
If
don't
you're
have
not-
to you don't have to say anything.
No, especially...
One of your rights is silence.
Yeah. Especially, like, if you don't have a story and you're just incriminating yourself. Like,
Yeah.
if she, like, they would have had to have gotten more evidence from her had they actually had something to arrest her on and Mirandize. Like, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And she talked. I don't remember where I was going with that, actually. You might have to cut that off.
It's fine.
'Cause I completely
let me
forgot where I
tell
was going
you
with that.
one thing about this, though. You can't see it. If you've seen the video, you probably can tell, but since this is a podcast, you can't see it right now. But she is the definition of crazy eyes.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Absolute definition of it. So, I mean, in the video of the interrogation, it's not as bad, which is probably just because it's a grainy, bad video. But in these pictures that I'm going to post and also send to you, like, she's got the craziest eyes I've ever seen.
Yeah, she terrifies
Like,
me.
she looks insane. Like, I don't...
Like, even that picture of her, like, in her police uniform, like, she's trying to look normal.
Yeah, that's when she was younger. That's
She
like
still
around the time that she
terrifies
probably
me.
did it. Like,
She looks like somebody that would bite somebody, you know?
she looks like a biter.
She's a biter.
Oh my God.
She looks like a biter, and she is a biter, and you know what? That's disgusting. Don't bite people.
Here's the thing, that part was like a self-defense bite. It wasn't like a biting out of anger. It was because she was biting because Sherri was fighting back and like had a hold of her.
It's not
she's bitter to
self-defense
get
of
away.
murder. I mean,
It's still
she
weird,
looks like a biter.
but-
I don't care. Self-defense or not, she looks like a fucking biter.
I mean, to be fair, it was self-defense to Sherri's self-defense. That's, I do gotta say, like, not that it was, like, self-defense, therefore it's fine that she did it. I just mean, like,
it's not fine. Well,
I don't think she was just gonna bite her. I think she bit her because Sherri was fighting back and was, like, holding her, and it was the only way to get away. But she does look like a biter.
She does look like a biter. And honestly, props to Sherri for fighting back.
Mm-hmm. I wish that it had gone better, but it's kind of hard when your assailant's a police officer.
Yeah, and is trained for combat.
Yeah.
And also bites you.
The one thing they're really trained in. Fighting.
Yeah.
Well, and then it seems like in the years following Sherri's murder, some of the department may have known and helped to cover it up. I don't think all of them did. I think that the people investigating, I don't think they were necessarily aware that Stephanie did it, but that they didn't want to look at her. But then obviously other people helped her get rid of evidence. So people were helping to try to uphold the department's reputation. And luckily the detectives in 2009 were more worried about solving the murder.
Yeah, as they should have been from the beginning, because here's the thing.
I think it's even more heinous when it's like a police officer doing it.
Yes, it is, because if the department's covering it up to not look bad, when it gets uncovered, they look even fucking worse.
Mm-hmm. And it took until March of 2012 for her to actually be convicted. And her defense team tried to say that the DNA evidence was corrupted because the envelope that it was stored in had like a little tear on it. But thankfully that did not get too far. And she was sentenced to 27 to life. Still don't love that it was like 27 the least. But,
I agree, you know, but I mean...
The scariest thing here is the scariest thing here is that in 2023, so last year, like at the end of the year, the parole board recommended Stephanie for early release, which it has to go to like the state parole board. So it's not just going to be the parole board from where she is, but those are the ones who recommended it. And now it has to go to the state board for them to look over it. And hopefully that doesn't happen because, in my opinion, she should be treated more harshly because she's a police officer, because she took an oath to protect people and she used her position to commit a terrible crime and cover it up, which is worse than not having that position and doing it, in my opinion. It's bad either way to commit murder, right? But especially for somebody who took an oath to protect the people, to then use their authority and their position as a police officer to do that crime and to get away with it for so long.
Yeah, it's like...
And she also had, like 20, I think it was 24 years to, maybe 23, 24 years for her to confess after the murder that she just didn't. And when they brought, they finally figured this out, she still is kind of like, at the end here, they said, like, you can go whenever you want, that stuff. And she was like, you're making me uncomfortable. If you're going to accuse me, like, I'm not okay with that.
Okay, but you did it.
But you did it. So
you literally did it.
It was pretty gross.
I'm not accusing you. I'm telling you that you did it because you know you did it.
I know you did it. Everybody knows you did it.
It's literally the most obvious thing in the world that you did it.
It's heartbreaking that it took so long because it should have been immediate.
Yeah.
Because
it was a million
people,
years ago.
like, immediately her dad was like, hey, she's been getting harassed by this chick. Like, maybe y'all should look into her. And, I mean, it took 20 years, but the DNA testing was available sooner.
Yeah.
The lucky thing is just that crime actually kind of went down in the area, so the police, some of the teams were getting handed cold cases. Right. So... And actually, the year that this happened, that Sherri got murdered, was like one of the highest, like, years for murder in their, like, city in the years around it, at least. Like, it was way worse than the other time around it. And then in 2009, that was when they were like, wow, we've got a lot of time on our hands. Not too many murders going on, huh, guys? And they handed out cold cases. And these guys were like, hey,
this one is literally so obvious a baby could solve it.
Yeah, they found it pretty quick, and they got her.
Yeah, good.
So
Do not let her ass go. Do not let her ass go.
Hopefully she doesn't get early release. At the very least, she needs to serve the minimum, but she should serve life, in my opinion.
I agree that she should serve life because it just is completely cold-blooded and completely just... Why?
And she's, like, married to a different guy after.
Exactly.
Like, it wasn't even, like, worth it. Like, what did she get out of it in the end?
Nothing. Prison.
All she did was end this beautiful young girl's life.
Because she was jealous.
Like, smart, beautiful, incredibly talented girl.
Because she
Woman, I should say. She's older than I even am now, so...
Because she wanted her man. And that's so stupid.
She didn't even get him.
And she wouldn't have.
I know, he didn't want her.
It didn't work out before, so why are you so obsessed with this guy that doesn't even want to be around you? Like, live your own life, be happy for yourself. Like, why do you need to be goofy? It's goofy.
Well, like I said, she went on and did, like, I didn't even write them down, but she went on and did, like, good things. Part of it is, like, people think maybe she was trying to make up and be this great person because of the terrible things she did.
Well, yeah,
and
but also...
she went on to do all these great things. Imagine how great it would have been if she had done all those great things without doing the murder beforehand. She could have just been a good person.
Literally, like...
And you know what? Her life could have turned out so great without doing that because, you know, she found love and she did these things and she was a respected member of the community and all this stuff. And she ruined it for herself by being a terrible person.
Exactly. And that's ridiculous. And I hate it and she's stupid. And I hope that she stays in jail because she does not need to be released out. Somebody like that literally, like, has the capability to do great things with their life and chooses to do terrible,
she's
awful
in, like,
things.
General population of the prison because...
Probably not, because she was a police officer.
Yeah, but the thing is, if she is, then inmates don't treat people who were cops very well. So.
No, they don't, which is why it's the same thing with, like, people who hurt kids or like
I would
Yolanda.
Almost say they're easier on cops than those people though.
Oh no, they for sure are, except for Yolanda.
Unless it's personally the cop who got them put in there, but I don't think they put the cops near those people.
No,
if you were the one who did it.
It's usually like people who do stuff to kids are kept away from Gen Pop. Cops are usually kept away from Gen Pop. There's a couple others too. Yolanda. I guess celebrity killers. I don't know. Yolanda's different.
The people who deserve the worst of it.
The people who are gonna get absolutely just.
They deserve it. There's a reason that's happening. It's because they deserve it.
The people that deserve Gen Pop justice are always away from Gen Pop. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey, not often enough because there's a reason we know that
we know about Gen Pop justice. Well, sometimes you have a good cop that'll just turn a blind eye. Look away.
A good cop who's technically being a bad cop.
Okay, well, we're not talking about technicalities. We're talking about morals.
Unlike this cop who was... she looked like a good cop, but was a bad cop.
Terrible cop. The worst
cop. Terrible cop.
Not the worst cop, but, like, one of the worst cops.
A pretty bad one, yeah.
Yeah, a really bad one.
Yeah, I don't have anything else really here other than, I guess I could tell you, Sherri's older sister, Connie... got it. I think she's in jail because she like embezzled or something. I didn't write it down.
Queen,
but pretty weird. I don't know. But she tried to get like her trial pushed back because she wanted to like be with her family because it was happening around the same time that they were catching Stephanie. And she was like, my family like just found out that the person who killed my sister is finally being arrested, blah, blah, like, could you push this back? And the judge was like, no, we've already pushed back your trial too many times, Connie.
Aww.
Because apparently she had it delayed a couple times already, so I think I don't know if she's still in jail, but I know she did go to jail.
Well, if she's not in jail anymore, I hope she's doing well.
I didn't look that far into it. I believe she did have a daughter, too, and the daughter spoke at the, like, sentencing or something, I think.
Good.
I didn't write that stuff down, really, either. I didn't really see anything too crazy.
I'm looking at
the whole case
crazy
itself
right
was
now.
crazy enough. What are you looking at?
Her face.
Oh, yeah, her face. So true. She's crazy looking.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if I mean, even if you've seen the interrogation, I don't know if you've seen, like,
I have.
the couple here.
She's just like...
Sherri looks like a woman in the 80s
Oh, yeah.
is supposed to look.
She's got the Princess Diana haircut in the wedding picture.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
That wedding picture
So
is
pretty.
so cute.
So pretty. And I love the color of her bridesmaid dresses. And I think the dark red is
That,
her
like,
mom.
rose pinkish.
Yeah, and that dark, that like wine color.
Yeah, I think
love
that's her
that.
mom and her dad on either side of her.
She was a woman of taste for sure.
Yeah. It's so sad.
She's
And they
so
were still
pretty.
newlyweds. They were 3 months into their marriage.
Aww.
And they were like, I mean, they were basically still settling into married life at that point.
Yeah.
So it was just, you know, it's so early on. And she was, like, she had done so much in that short time, too, that she was alive. She had excelled so far.
She really
And
did.
I feel like she could have done a lot more, too, if she had lived longer.
Oh, 100%.
So, yeah, like I said, that's about all I've got for this episode.
Okay. Thank you for
So,
this.
Yeah.
This is a case that I honestly kind of wanted to talk about with somebody because Stephanie is just so ridiculous.
Yeah, I was actually going to do a different one that I saw because I saw this girl's post on TikTok about her boyfriend's, like, murderers getting sentenced. Like, she was getting ready to go to the sentencing. But when I was doing my research on it, there just wasn't really enough to write a case on. So maybe I'll mention that if we find, like, another little one that we want to do at the same time or something.
Yeah, I think it would
Just
be
because
really
it wasn't a
cool.
very big case, but at the same time I feel bad. Like, not that it wasn't a big case. I do think it got talked about, especially because her videos on TikTok went viral.
Right.
But it's just one of those things. I just couldn't get enough information to make, like, one of our episodes fully about it.
Right. I think we could do like mini-sodes, like where like you pick a few like tiny cases and talk about them.
Or it could
I
be
don't know.
something like maybe I do a small case and you do a small case in the
Yeah,
same one or something.
Like a joint episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just really think that people who think they can get away with murder in the interrogation room are so fucking funny to watch because they're such terrible liars and they all do the same thing.
I feel like by the point where you're in the interrogation room, like, you're kind of at the point where they know it's you, bud.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, if they're interrogating you, they know that you either know something about what's going on or that you did it. And that is why, when you are being interrogated and you cannot leave, ask for a lawyer. Or, and basically,
Or
admit
if you're
to
a bad
it and
person,
embarrass
maybe just
yourself.
tell them.
Yeah, if you're a bad person, just, like, think that you can outsmart them and then fail miserably so that you can go to jail for life. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. If you're, like, a person who committed a murder, don't get a lawyer. It's
Yeah.
actually really dumb if you get a lawyer. You should just, like, tell them everything and then be like, that's what you think I did, isn't it?
Because here's
At
well,
the end.
for innocent people though, like the way that police interrogate
if you're
people, you
innocent,
can
get
be
a
tripped
lawyer.
into saying something. If you're innocent, get a lawyer. If you've
Yeah,
done
well,
something,
here's the thing.
you're
Well,
smarter
and then-
than the cops.
Yeah, some people will look at you if you get a lawyer and be like, oh, that's a sign they're guilty. Quite frankly, just get a lawyer because
Yeah, you don't want to.
can get tricked into a confession or you can get, like, coerced into it. And what they're doing is illegal when they do that. But sometimes there are not good cops, such as Stephanie. And sometimes there are not good cops that are going to just want to close a case.
Such as
So
the
that-
people that worked
yeah.
with Stephanie, so that the actual
Such as the
criminal
people
couldn't
that
be
worked
caught.
with her.
Because the actual criminal was Stephanie.
So even if people are going to look at you weird, you want to get a lawyer, say no to polygraph tests because they're not accurate. If
And they're
you're too
usually-
anxious, then it'll just say that you are lying. And I'm a very anxious person, so I would say no.
They're usually not admissible in court anyway.
Yeah, because they're not that
Reliable.
accurate.
They're not
They're not
reliable.
reliable.
You know what is reliable though?
I mean, they
Making
are
a fool
accurate.
of yourself.
The people who are
interrogation.
lying, it usually can tell that they're lying, but there are people who aren't lying that it might think you're lying. That's the problem.
Yes.
So, I mean, it can usually tell if somebody's lying, but it also can tell if you're just anxious
Well,
or nervous.
I don't need a lie detector to tell me that Stephanie was lying. I don't think anybody needed a lie detector for that, because it's so obvious.
What is this about?
It was a million years ago. Jeez, I don't remember.
The G's.
It's a million years ago.
Oh my God, I forgot to say. She says G's like every 5 seconds.
I just know her food is unseasoned.
I watched an hour damn long video.
And it's basically just her saying,
it's a million years ago.
About?
Geez, what's it about? It doesn't seem familiar. I don't recall. But then she recalls like certain things perfectly.
She recalls a lot of things.
As soon as it's about Sherri.
In great detail.
I don't know. And
Who's
then
Sherri?
maybe I did talk to her. I don't know.
Maybe
I don't even. What's her name again? Girl, you just told us it was Sherri.
They should have mispronounced Sherri's name so she could correct it.
They should have been like Sherri Mutton, and she would have been like Sherri Rasmussen. I mean, who's she?
I don't know who that is. Leaks her
you know
entire
John
address.
Rutan. Oh, John Rutan. John Rutan. I know a John Rutten.
That's so funny. Like, girl, you know.
And
who
then they're like,
about.
"Oh, do you know a John Rutten? Oh, how did you know him? Oh, we were really good friends in college."
But I really didn't know.
And then
him
they're
that
like,
well.
Do you guys know each other? We're really good friends. Really, really good friends. Oh, but I don't even know when he got married. Oh, I did not go to his wedding.
Why didn't you go
I
to
don't
his
even
wedding?
know what happened. I don't even know where he lived once he got married. But before he got married, he lived at this exact address. Oh, I don't know if I visited them after he got married, but before he got married, I went to his house 17 times. Like, I don't know.
Day.
She just had such specific answers for everything else.
Goofy. She's a goofy. She's corny.
Extremely.
What's wrong with her?
She's
God.
crazy.
She's
born with crazy eyes.
She just fucking. Oh,
Somebody looked her in the eyes and married her.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have the strength to do something like that. I love women. Don't get me wrong. I love men too.
Not that one, though.
Not that one.
Yeah. Fair.
She makes Yolanda look sane.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, Yolanda just was obsessed with herself, I feel like. And that's what you see when you look at her. It's just like this person who thinks that they're like on top. This girl just looks crazy. It doesn't look like she thinks that she's above anybody else. It looks like she's just
But she does.
In her brain, she's just got like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like there's
Something
no
wrong
actual thoughts. It's just like a bunch of hormones with legs like running around screaming in her head.
I mean, to be fair, that's pretty much all people.
Yeah, but like,
all living creatures. But she's
inside her head, it's like that
something's
that
wrong.
part of that Olivia Rodrigo song where it's like screaming and then she's like all the time. I'm thankful all the time.
Yeah.
That's what's going on in her head right now.
At all times, yeah.
At all times.
At all times.
But also one thing I did read too is that John like showed pictures of their wedding at the trial and was like sobbing, and Stephanie like wouldn't look up when that was happening.
So
she,
she's
like,
a
refused
coward
to look up at the pictures of their wedding and him crying.
So she's a fucking coward.
Which I just can't even imagine how guilty he feel. Like he probably already felt super guilty because
it probably eats
his
him
wife
alive every
died.
day.
And then to find out, like, that it was his ex and that, like, he didn't take it seriously and that he not only didn't take it seriously, but then after his wife died, he was like, oh, hey, old college fling. Oh, so nice to see you again. And then they had sex again. Like, I can't imagine how terrible that feels for. I mean, I can kind of imagine it because it's making me sad, but I mean, I'm sure it's a million times worse than I even imagine it to be, you know?
It's just sad.
Mm-hmm. It's just a really rough
sad situation because of how long it took to finally get these answers, to just the situation of it all, to just Stephanie being like that. It's all just really sad.
And with what happened to Connie, I saw a thing that, like, the mom was like, please go easy on her. I don't think I can bear to lose another daughter.
Oh my God.
The judge did not go easy on her.
That's heartbreaking.
It's not the judge's fault because, like,
right.
he had to give a punishment that fit the crime. But it's just so sad, like, the parents going through, like, they lost their one daughter because she was murdered, and then their other daughter, like, going to jail. It's just hard on them.
It's really hard.
And it was, like, right at the same time as the murder was finally being solved. So it's just, like, a very emotional time period for them. So just tough.
Really tough. Really, really tough.
So anyway, that's everything. That's all I've got for this episode of Horrid and Vicious. So I guess we'll see everybody next week.
We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.